Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of New Music Finds. So this is where I like to collect together all the different albums that I've purchased over the past week and present it to you. And I get them from different places like my local record store, but also online retail like Amazon, eBay, and more. For this past week, I've got 8 things to run through with you, and we'll get started with that in just a bit. But before we do, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by subscribing, you'll be able to stay up to date on really cool episodes just like this with New Music Finds. So as I always like to do, I like to kick off with new releases. There was a lot of them this past week here, including the fact that after I did my normal pre-order and then stuff arrives, I always like to jump on Amazon and click through all the new stuff that just dropped, this past Friday, which was May 12th. And I found 2 more things that I didn't even know was coming out. So I got to add those into the collection. And one of those being this one right here, Bryan Adams, Pretty Woman, the musical. So this one here was dropped digitally a year ago. I think it was a week before the latest album, So Happy It Hurts, came out. And I remember listening to it at the time and also just being shocked that he would drop an album before a new album was coming out, especially one that was the new studio album that he was promoting, So Happy It Hurts, the week before having this Pretty Woman, the musical soundtrack come out before it. But at the time, I didn't really know or understand what that was. Meaning I knew that Bryan Adams had written a musical. He and Jim Vallance, they co-wrote the thing together. And Jim Vallance, if you don't know, is his co-writer that did most of the songs from back in the 80s and everything. So very cool to have those two doing it. And there was an original cast recording of that when it came out and hit Broadway and everything back in 2018. But Bryan Adams decided he wanted to record those songs himself. And after doing a little more research about it right now, I found out that at the time of recording the album So Happy It Hurts, he was having such a fun time doing it that he decided he just wanted to keep recording material. So he grabbed all of those songs from the musical and went ahead and just recorded his own version of it. And then at the same time, he also re-recorded some greatest hits and stuff like that, which would later drop as digital albums shortly after the album So Happy It Hurts came out, called Classic and Classic 2. Each one I think had about 7 tracks or so on it, 7-8 tracks. I'm kind of hoping they gather those up on one CD and release them, because so far they're still just digital, but there are vinyl editions of those out there. I think as part of Record Store Day, if I'm not mistaken. But Pretty Woman, so he records all of that stuff. It is Bryan Adams. It doesn't have the cast or anything. Him and Jim Vallance play all the instruments on it. 16 tracks on here. It sounds like Bryan Adams. It sounds more like modern day Bryan Adams, although it was promoted as sounding like the 80s. And there's a couple tracks on here that are real throwback style songs to the 80s. But for the most part, I'd say this is middle 90s forward kind of style Bryan Adams. But it's great to get it, and I'm glad that it finally got a physical release, because at the time when it was digital only a year ago, I didn't have a lot of interest in it. I listened to it, it kind of didn't click, and I moved on from it. Now that I've gotten it, I'm really enjoying it. And if I had known Bryan Adams was essentially dropping a brand new album this past Friday, I would have picked it up. All right, another one that I didn't know was coming out, and kind of a weird story behind it, in that Michael Thompson Band, and this album here is called The Love Goes On, and this features Moon Calhoun, or Richard Calhoun, as the lead vocalist, who did the original album of Michael Thompson Band back in the late 80s. Sorry, I think it was like 89 maybe, out on Geffen Records. And I don't own that yet, but I did find one on eBay, so I've got that coming. But when I saw this, for whatever reason, I thought that it was a different artist. I wasn't thinking Michael Thompson Band at the time. And so I went ahead and but I recognized Moon Calhoun's name. So when I read it, I thought something else. I saw Moon Calhoun and I thought, oh, I recognize that name. I go ahead and place the order and I got it. Then I wanted to know more about the artist, and I looked it up and I couldn't understand why there weren't more albums out by this band as I had thought. I was thinking it was the Ian Thompson Band, the Canadian artist. And then as I started to look into it more, I realized I didn't actually know this artist at all. I did recognize Moon Calhoun, but it wasn't because he had sung on albums that I knew of or something from Michael Thompson Band. It was because he was the lead vocalist for a band called The Strand that Rock Candy Records had put out, and that album came out in 1980, and they did a reissue of it. So luckily all worked out, because I have to say this is a really, really good album. If you don't know The Strand is basically like Toto, and it's produced by Jeff Porcaro of Toto, so it's in that style, and if you love that style of music, you are going to love this. This has turned out to be my favorite album that came out this past week, beating out Bryan Adams, and even the next one, which I thought was going to be my favorite of the week because it is so good, Heaven's Edge, Get It Right. This, again, blew me away. This is so good if you like glam metal, if you've been missing good glam metal from the late 80s, early 90s, this band here not only did it well and never really hit the big time or anything with it, kind of ran under the radar. I only found them through their debut album that was reissued by Rock Candy Records, which is a great one to have. But then this one here comes out. It is actually their third album, and it equally lives up to the classics of the original, in my opinion. I am so enjoying that album. Next one was just another good one. I have to say I've had a great musical week with these releases here. The weekend was fantastic. Just every time I put one of these on, it hit the spot. Even though the stuff is wildly different. I mean, we've already got, Bryan Adams, kind of, the melodic rock style stuff. We've got sort of Toto style stuff. We've got glam metal. And then this, punk, Richie Ramon, Live to Tell. This turned out to be so good. It's like a Lost Ramones album, in my opinion. And if you don't know Richie Ramon, short-lived drummer that was part of the lineup from 83 to 87. He did write with the band. He did sing a couple tracks with the band. Even one of his songs they had a hit with, I think Joey Ramone sang it though, but that has stayed in their sets at the time and stuff like that. And he only started recording solo albums in 2013, so this has been a decade on. It's his third one, and it's really, really good stuff. It's great. I highly recommend that if you're a Ramones fan, a punk fan, and you're looking for something else, like me, having had the whole Ramones catalog. You just can't get any more. But occasionally we get things from CJ Ramon, we get stuff here from Richie Ramon and so forth. And, we're in the Misfits, and so you're getting stuff from them or Jerry Only or stuff like that. But it's nice. It kind of quells that need for stuff from those original bands. All right, we kind of move into archival stuff after this, after 4 great new studio albums there. Rick Springfield and Springfield, a 1975 recorded album. This has just finally come out. It was shelved for 48 years, intended to be his 4th solo album. The label didn't like it at the time. This is reissued by Iconoclastic, which is Sony and Columbia. So major label putting this out. This is not some small independent label or self-release type thing. The label has now decided 48 years later, hey, let's put it out. And I think that just has to do with the fact that archival material is really a big seller these days. Plus, they don't have to pay for it. It's already done. It's been written off the books. It is just sitting collecting dust. So lots of labels are doing it, whether it's box sets, live releases, or like this, going into the vaults and putting out unreleased albums. Neil Young keeps doing it. Well, we've got one from Rick Springfield now. And they had promoted it as being a harder rock album that the label didn't like, and they wanted him to do more pop. And I'm not as familiar with that earlier era of stuff, but I would say this is still in that sort of pop rock vein. It's a little more rockin' than I know, definitely, than the debut, which was more of an acoustic album. But it's not quite as hard rock as I was expecting. Still, it's Rick Springfield, so good stuff. Another archival release is a remix from Hanoi Rocks for Oriental Beat. They never liked the original mix of this, so they went back in and had a new mix of it done that really kind of brings the guitars and everything up front on it. And luckily, it's the one album I didn't own by them and I was having trouble getting, so when I found this, I thought, perfect, let's add it to the collection. I'm really enjoying the album, and turns out I actually know some of the songs from it. I'm not sure if I know it from, I've got a couple anthology type things from Hanoi Rocks, and it's probably where I know it from, but I'm wondering if Michael Monroe maybe re-recorded some of these with other bands, or I just know them from live albums or whatnot. But it was fun putting this on, not thinking I knew anything. Motivatin' was one of the ones that I knew on here, and I was sort of like, wow, oh, okay, cool, I know some of these, and some of these are great tunes that I've always loved. So it was great to hear them in this new format. Another archival release, Dream Theater, who's been doing this a lot lately, going through their archives, part of their Lost Not Forgotten series, and this one here, When Dream and Day Unite, the demos, 87 to 89. It's a 2 CD package. So when I ordered this, I thought it was just a single disc. I was very surprised when it came and it was 2 CDs worth of stuff. I had no idea they had that many demos and things from early on. Don't know if any of this got independently released at the time, you know, the way some bands did back in the 80s, putting out self-released demos and albums and stuff like that. But we've got a bunch of instrumental demos, and we've got the Charlie Dominici demos, who was their first vocalist during that time frame before James LaBrie came in. Then we've got some other stuff on here, some pre-production demos and things, and then some that are referred to as Christmas demos. And I've got to look into those because I don't know if they were just recorded at Christmas time or what, or if they're all really Christmassy related. I mean, they do the song Oh Holy Night on here, which is a Christmas song. So very cool, but those are at the end. You can enjoy everything else and not have to get into the secular stuff until the very end. But I just hadn't really been thinking about it, and then I looked inside, and you get the the list of people who were part of the lineup from 87 to 89. And so there's only 2 original members of Dream Theater left. We still have John Myung on bass and John Petrucci on guitar, and John Petrucci being really the driving force in the band these days. It was kind of Mike Portnoy until he left, and then it seemed like John Petrucci really stepped up. Maybe he was always running things behind the show, but now at least he's also the vocal person of the band, always doing interviews and stuff like that. So, okay, and the last thing that I've got to show you guys is this. Anthony Phillips, 1984, a triple CD edition that came out in 2016 on Esoteric Records. I like that label. They always do it up right. We've got 2 CDs and a DVD as part of this. What I liked is that disc 1 in here has a new stereo mix. So I already have the vinyl edition of this that I picked up a couple weeks back going to Factory Records. I was just taking a chance on it because Anthony Phillips being the original guitar player in Genesis, and I got to know him through some other things that he did and so forth, and I thought, let me check this out. It just had that, cool 1980s cover, not to mention it's called 1984. I think the album came out in 80 or 81 originally, but it's very keyboard synthesizer heavy stuff, very different than what you would expect from him. And I popped it on and it just kind of fit my mood, so much so that I enjoyed it so much I had to get a CD edition. But as I said, already having the vinyl of it, I really didn't want to just replicate it. So I've got the original mix there. Now I've got this new stereo mix from the 2016 when this came out. But then it's got a whole second disc of tracks in here. It's got early stage mixes and different takes, demos and things like that. There's a whole bunch of that in here. Then we've got a DVD in here that has a 5.1 mix of that stereo sound in here. So you get the surround sound and everything like that. So a nice little collection and everything to get. What did bug me is this came from the UK, and during shipping the thing got smushed and it bent the spine. Not to mention, there's actually no name or anything on here. They don't even put the 1984, much less the Anthony Phillips. So when this thing goes on the wall, not only do I have to stare at that, but on top of that, it doesn't even say who it is. And it's not like they made a mistake in it, because it still says Esoteric Records there, and it still has the catalog number, but I'm a little bummed about that. And that's one of the main reasons I hate digipacks. Stuff like that gets bent, creased, cracked, whatever, and it's just, I don't like that. A jewel case I can change out, but you guys have heard me complain about that enough. So all in all, man, like I said, it had a really good release week with 7 things coming out. I thought I was only going to get 5 and have those, and that's what I started with. I started with these. I was very happy about this, but like I said, one of my favorite things to do is to jump on Amazon, and if you haven't done this, you should do this. You can go on Amazon and you can go over and click under their categories of everything they have on their site, and there's a section that is for CDs, vinyl, music, that sort of stuff. And if you click on that, it'll take you to new releases, and you have to go in that order to it. You can't just click outright to new releases because it doesn't take you to the same page. But if you go there and you click new releases on the thing, then you can see everything that came out, and you can see they order it by sales figures. So the things that are at the very top are the best selling things. And I always like to scroll down at least 20 pages. And I found these 2 things in there that I didn't even know were coming out. This one was actually a mistake in ordering, but it turned out to be my favorite thing. So I love that. And then I found this, which I didn't know was getting an actual CD release. So very cool. Hopefully you guys also had a great New Music Finds week. Let me know what you guys came across and found. Hopefully you found some stuff in here to like. Maybe you want to go check this out. You didn't know about it, or like this. So maybe you're finding out through my channel the way that I find out through Amazon new releases. Okay, everyone, take care. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.